tell you, I was so freaking poor at this point in my life. You don't even want to know how poor. But anyway, at that point, I went with the staff writing deal that offered me $5,000 less than anybody else. So why on earth would I do such a stupid thing, especially when at that point in time, $5,000 was like $1 million to me. It was life-changing. And the reason I went with that deal is I went with the company that had offices all around the world. I didn't want to write only country music. I wanted to be able to be connected to offices in LA and London, New York, all over the place. And the company offering me less money had those opportunities.
That was
right.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they owned a record label. It was going to be a total in. It was a no-brainer. Do I want $5,000 up front, or do I want opportunities to write with hit artists, sort of write for hit artists? That $5,000 that I gave up was only going to be recouped anyway. Any money you ever get as a staff writer is an advance against your future royalties. If you don't earn any future royalties, you're going to be saying, you want fries with that. But hopefully you are going to earn future royalties. And when that happens, having them recoup your own money is like, that's the least important thing. What mattered was by making that decision to go with the company that I believed not only would offer me the most opportunities, but I want to add, the publisher I signed with at that time, he was such an intense song critiquer. He could just get right inside of what was wrong with my songs. And he wasn't nice about it. He wasn't nurturing about it. It was horrible. It was painful every single time. But he taught me how to be a songwriter. And when I was having to make the decision between all the companies that were wooing me because I had something of so much value to them, that was, one of the factors. But the big factor, I won't lie, was that I knew by going with that company, I was going to have opportunities. I didn't know they were going to be Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys, but I knew it was very likely there would be opportunities.
That's why I want to slow down just a bit to unpack.
Yeah, that was a pretty long answer to why I have a 615 area code.
How about that for a good interview lead-off question? Yeah.
But wait a minute, I'll confuse you even more with my 615 area code.
Okay.
Right now, I'm saying aloha from Hawaii. I have a home there, and I try to spend as much time there as possible, but I go to Nashville a lot for work.
See, kids, take his advice, and you will, too, be from Hawaii wearing one of these shirts. So that's something to look forward to. I just want to unpack some of the terms you used, just to make sure everyone in the room is kind of following along. So just quick show of hands. Does everybody understand what a staff writing deal is? Yeah, if you don't, you have a good. So what's the difference between a staff writing deal and being signed, for example, to an artist, to a label? Staff writing deal is kind of a deal over a period of time. And so when he's talking about the $5,000, he's talking about the draw that they were offering him as part of the deal, right? Now, was that
per year?
Per year. And at that time, which is just give us a little era of this. What time you're talking about? What era you were?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. I think early 90s.
Early 90s, because the landscape for staff deals has changed radically, and that's certainly something I want to ask you about. But in the 90s, what was a typical yearly draw that you'd be offered for a staff deal if you were a writer with a track record, or as you said, a writer bringing something to the table?
When you say with a track record or bringing something to the table, it depends entirely on what you're bringing to the table and what the track record is. If you were Diane Warren, who at that point in time was, the goddess of songwriting, the most successful songwriter through probably the 80s and the 90s in the US, she was Max Martin, that kind of level. Or I remember a year, I used to be friendly with Diane. I remember a time when her ASCAP royalties for 1 year, and I'm going back like 30 years ago, was over $10 million. And, if it's Diane Warren, there's no limit to what you could ask for. Somebody like me at that point in time with one little track record, it wasn't a track record, it was something to bring to the deal. I could be looking at $20,000, $25,000 a year, but more important than the money was all my demos being paid for. And at that, even back then, I was spending more than $10,000 a year on demos. And they were all going to be paid for, although part of what was paid for was going to be recouped. And most important, more than the money, was being signed to a company that now had a vested interest in my having hits. People who were going to develop me, develop my songs, and pitch them, and put me together with artists. That's what's really important.
And when you went with Zamba, they had an office in Nashville, but you knew they had offices all over the world. You had access to other markets, other genres.
Right, I still lived in Los Angeles, so I interacted with people in the LA office as well as the Nashville office. But I'm going to tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody I said this. The person
Won't
who
go beyond
signs
this
you.
room, I can guarantee you.
Thank you. Okay, the person who signs you is the one who, from a financial point of view, really has to show that they signed somebody who's making money for the company. Somebody in another office, if they pitch your songs or get you some success, they're in a sense taking away the chance of somebody that they sign having more success. So there's an aspect of politics involved. I did work with the New York office, the LA office, the London office, but they were never going to have the same incentive to push my work and me as the Nashville office would have, because they had a financial stake in it.
And they're the ones that signed you, so they're the ones that wanted to show that you were kind of being productive for the company. Cool.
Right, that if I were not successful, it was a bad reflection on them.
Right. Now you moved to Nashville on the strength of this deal. Have you spent a fair amount of time there? And as I said before, I know that and by the way, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then before it gets too late, I'm going to turn it over to our audience here, because I'm sure they have a lot of questions for you too. They also requested that if possible, we split our time a little bit and talk about the business aspects. And because you are someone who teaches the craft so intensively, I want to try to spin over to that as well and see if maybe we can link those topics a bit. But just to, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? Would you ask for a show of hands for about how many people are writing because they want other artists to record their songs versus how many are artists writing for your own project?
Got you. So it's a great question, and you'll notice if you've ever been to a song panel where someone's critiquing songs, that's often the very first question they'll ask you after listening to your song is that a song for you as artist, or is that a song you are hoping to pitch to another artist? Because the aesthetic criteria they'll use to critique that song will be totally different in those two cases.
Absolutely.
So Jason's asking for a little bit of a show of hands. How many of you are thinking of your primary path when you get out of Berkeley as an artist writer, primarily performing your own songs and primarily writing songs for yourself to perform, right? And I don't know, I don't know if you can see the room. I guess you can.
No, but you can give me an idea.
More than half say that path. How many of you are interested in the idea of really being a writer pitching to other artists? Yep. So about a third with some overlap. How many of you, and be honest, raise your hand both times? Quite a number of them.
And that's fine.
Yeah. Although,
you know what? A lot of staff writers, including me, started out wanting to be an artist. It never crossed my mind in the beginning to write for anybody else because I was going to be the superstar. and I was going to be the singer-songwriter. And it didn't exactly work out. You know, when I had been 28 years old for 6 consecutive years, I sort of was getting the idea I was not about to be the next Justin Bieber, and it was time to start writing for other people.
Wait, that went by a little too, say that one more time. And one thing you'll notice when you're talking to a great songwriter is they have turns of phrase. You'll notice how what he says already sounds like lines to songs. Now, you have to be careful because sometimes they're quoting songs they've already written, and you don't want to kind of grab those lines. But you can tell. What was it you just said? You said when I turned 28 for the 6th consecutive year.
Yes.
Everybody get what he meant by that? That's still wrap my head around that, right?
And the truth of the matter is, for the kind of artist I wanted to be, 28 was already too old.
Gotcha.
You know, so I realized what I'm really, okay, there's 2 points I want to make. One is a lot of people who raised their hands saying they're writing for themselves because they want to be artists. That may not wind up ultimately being your path. For some of you, it certainly will. But I've seen a lot of people who are staff writers who are phenomenal artists, but it just didn't happen to them. And that's and I also want to add, I am so much happier that it went the way it did. I think it made me a much happier person by not getting what I wanted, although it was very hard. I grieved it. The other point, go on.
Do you think there was a moment, like an epiphany moment, where you figured out that your path really needed to change and that vision?
There was.
Yeah. Do you remember what that?
I know exactly what it was. I had done a showcase for labels, and there were no bites. You know, I walked away from that showcase without a deal on the table, and I accepted, you know what? It's time to rethink this. It's not happening. And but the other point I wanted to make for people who are saying they're writing for themselves, I spent 8 years behind the desk at RCA Records, meaning the other side. I was in the A&R department. I was the lowest level person, but you had to get past me to get to my boss's ears. In other words, I had the ability to say no. I didn't have the ability to say yes, but I could pass your song along or pass it into the trash.
You were a gatekeeper. Yeah.
Exactly. And that taught me the most important thing that I probably can say to people who want to be artists. And that is that nobody walks down the street humming a voice. There has to be a song. The most common thing I would write on a package that was submitted to the A&R department was great voice, great look, no songs. Great voice, great look, no hits. Meaning, and no songs that were identifiable, that were part of who that artist's persona is. If you think about people like Taylor Swift, the songs are inextricably intertwined with who she is. She couldn't do or wouldn't do a Kelly Clarkson song or a Pink song, which there was an intertwining, an enmeshing of the artist persona with the songs. And I just had this thing about the great voice not being as important as the great song. I just got it hammered home again. I was working, teaching, and performing at a music festival in Europe, and there was this one show where 3 singers were coming out, each one doing 3 songs. The first one, oh my God, what a voice. I mean, just about as good as it gets. And the songs were just so boring. Melodically, I couldn't latch on to anything. I couldn't tell you what the chorus was. And lyrically, I have no idea. It was just wandering, artsy, whatever, with this gorgeous voice. And I'm so bored after 5 minutes of this, I can't even keep my eyes off my phone. Artist number 2, basically the exact same thing, but an even better voice. We're talking about somebody on one of the big TV competitions. I don't remember if it was The Voice or their version of Idol. And again, no songs. Then artist number 3 comes up with this interesting, distinctive voice that nobody would call great, but identifiable, and the songs were there and she had me in the palm of her hand. I swear to you that right now I have chill bumps remembering it, because I sat there looking at her and thinking, this is a star. So people, if you've got an amazing voice, don't let that sort of mask the fact that you've got to have an underlying killer song. Doesn't matter how amazing the voice is. What matters is what it's singing. I mean, do I need to say anything more than Bob Dylan? Leonard Cohen. It doesn't. It doesn't take a voice to be a star. But without the songs, it doesn't matter what the voice is.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because, teaching songwriting here at Berkeley, I think I don't need to tell all of you, there are powerhouse vocalists showing up at this school. And no matter how good you were in high school, you get here and you're surrounded by people who kind of singe your eyebrows off. And believe me, when you're a teacher here, that happens even more often. And what Jason's talking about is something I've certainly seen, which is you would think that having a great voice wouldn't necessarily make it any easier to write a great melody, but it takes a little bit to realize that sometimes having a great voice can actually make it harder to write a great melody. Have you seen that in terms of your teaching or working with someone? Why do you think it is that someone who's got those chops as a vocalist struggles to find what a great vocal melody for a song is?
Because they can make anything sound great to somebody who's not really skilled in listening to the underlying song. I literally just came from teaching somewhere. I won't even say what the country was, because I was just in 3 different countries. And I don't want any chance of this getting back to the person, but there is one of the people who was right at that moment in the top finals of The Voice in that country. And oh my God, can she sing? It was insane. And I told her after listening to a song that her challenge is even greater, because she could she could sing a menu and make it sound amazing.
For this, you start writing the menu, right?
Exactly. And I actually have had instances where I've written with unbelievable singers and artists where I have actually had to say to them, stop singing. I can't tell how good this melody is or isn't with your voice on it, because I love it. So stop singing and let me put my mediocre voice on it and listen back to it, and I'll have a better ability to assess the melody.
So what advice would you give someone who it's no fault to have a great voice? Don't feel bad about it. But let's say you have that voice and you say to yourself, I wonder if I've got this going on. I wonder if maybe my vocal chops are holding back my melody writing. What advice would you give, a developing writer to make sure that strength doesn't work against them? Do you have any techniques you would recommend?
I hope I do. And before I say it, I want to mention right now we're talking about melody writing. Just so you know, I'll go on record and tell you that I think the top 3 reasons that most songs become successful in order would be melody, melody, and melody. I feel like melody absolutely rules. And I could go on and on about why I have concluded that after my hundreds of years in the music business. I'm certain it's melody. Okay, now that said, how do you know if your melody is where it needs to be? Well, first of all, I don't think you can know that until you've tried to beat the melody that you already have. Can you rewrite that chorus 5 more times? For instance, let's just say my title is, can you rewrite that chorus? And I build a whole chorus reiterating that rhythm, which is a lot of what I hear happening on the radio. Can you rewrite that chorus? Did it, 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 etc. Okay, now I love it, it's done. Can I look at that line and rewrite it by breaking up the rhythm differently? Can you rewrite that chorus? Oh, 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 can do 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 can emphasize that same note do 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 do, or maybe I could do, can you rewrite the chorus? Can you rewrite that chorus? Can you rewrite, etc. I could do this for hours. What's the chance that the very first one that popped out of my mouth, my instrument, whatever, that is the best it could possibly be? And I will challenge you and say, if you believe me, that your career is riding on those melodies, why would you settle for the first one or three or five? Sometimes we get the gift, and the first one is the one you go back to. But I don't want to settle until I know I've pushed the envelope. Have I tried that unexpected wow high note, that unexpected rhythm in the melody that's going to make somebody go, wow. I gotta tell you, the song right now that is completely just blowing my mind open still is The Joke, Brandi Carlile. You know, if you don't know, she's the most nominated woman in the 2019 Grammys, 6 Grammy nominations. And the song was never a hit. It's an Americana kind of a song. I want you to listen to Brandi Carlile's The Joke and listen to the melodic intervals and the chord changes that made that melody absolute chill bumps. And I refuse to believe, I haven't asked her, but I refuse to believe that not one note was changed from what first came out.
Of course, the problem is when you hear a song that good, it sounds like it just dropped from the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of go, maybe if I just sing and it comes out and I got that feeling of spontaneity. I've had people say, if I don't trust that flow, that initial version, I'm going to lose the magic. And I think there's a wisdom to hanging on to that first version.
Of course.
Jason's absolutely right. You might sing that first version and then try 12 other ways. And then you go, you know, having tried the 12 other ways, there was something magic about that first version.
Yes, and sometimes there is.
That's right. But if you don't try those 12 other ways, you're just going on faith that the first version was the perfect version, because you can't compare it to anything else. So one technique would be, don't be afraid to revise. Don't be afraid to experiment with your first versions of things. Any other thoughts about holding back the sort of hypnosis of that great voice seducing you into thinking that automatically what you're singing is a great melody?
And then the other thing that you can do is get professional feedback, get input on that melody or the whole song before you lock into it, before you get married to it. Get some input. Is this working? What do you think about this? And I'll tell you something, in my experience, a lot of people find it easier to tear apart lyrics. It's so obvious. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't show an image, whatever. But it's harder to really identify or quantify, why is this melody not killing me? And I think it's so important. So get feedback, try rewriting it, and that's what we have to do. There are artists and writers I work with. We'll spend an entire afternoon working on a chorus melody, because it's that important.
Cool. I think it's a good time maybe to pivot around, let some questions come.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to think, if I turn this around, I think you'll be able to see the student. I'm just going to do maybe this much.
I see me. I saw me for a second. Damn, I'm big.
Yeah.
Hey, while you're getting that set, I'll tell you about a new study I just read about that's fascinating. They found out that guitarists actually spend 50% of their time tuning their guitars and the rest of the time playing out of tune.
I agree. Like, dude, like, turn.
I think you can see.
I see you.
Hi, hello. My name is Javier, and I was also trying to get you to kind of extend on the, getting feedback on your songs. Do you think that it's helpful to have maybe, as well as the professional feedback, like your friends, or say like a random person to try and sing your song, or get that type of feedback, or
it depends on whether your friends and your family know what they're talking about, because those are the people who are most likely to hear the sound, the voice, and not be able to separate whether there is a song underneath. But there is certainly something to be said if you have a song that people are really responding to, whether it's an audience, whether it's your friends, your family, that's got to tell you something. They may not be able to tell you what to fix or why something's not working, but I think it can help to find out play them a few songs. What's your favorite? What do you like about it the most? Sometimes people will say to me, I gotta tell you, my girlfriend, my mother, my sister, they love this song. And I'll say, well, are they publishers? Or do they work for record labels? Because this song ain't happening to my ears. So I guess, there's not a definitive answer, but I think there is benefit that can be gotten as long as you're not going to trust everything they say and not make changes because of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Javier,
Oh, you're welcome, Javier.
I'm going to jump in with one comment and then turn you to the next question, but I think
Okay.
that's a really excellent question that he asked. And
Yeah.
I do believe that if you know who you're asking and what to expect from them, you can get really useful information from people that aren't publishers, aren't songwriters. But you have to be careful not to just ask them, do you like my song?
Right.
So that they feel like what they're trying to do is make you feel good. But if you can ask them, what did you think the story was in this song? Or did you identify with the person in this song? Now you're getting them to talk about what you want the final listener to experience in the song. There's an art to getting that kind of feedback from someone who's not a professional feedback giver, though.
Mm-hmm.
Really good point. Next question.
Wait just a second. On that same topic, I just want to add that getting that kind of feedback, when the feedback is anything other than, oh my God, this is Song of the Year, incredible. But instead, when you get, well, I don't really love it, I can't really sing the chorus back, and things like that, it hurts. It's horrible. To this day, when a co-writer or a co-writer's publisher might say to me, I'm just not loving this one, or I'm not feeling the chorus, or whatever, you might as well just kick me in the stomach, or even lower, because it still feels horrible.
Yeah.
But I genuinely believe that a lot of what made me a successful writer was the ability to take that criticism, decipher which of it resonated, which of it made sense to me when the pain passed.
Yeah.
And make changes and see if I could make the song better. But don't think it's not going to hurt, because it does.
Isn't that why they say that in Nashville that to be a songwriter in Nashville, you need the soul of a poet and the skin of a rhinoceros? You ever heard that?
I've always said the skin of an armadillo.
Gotcha.
Yes.
All right, next question.
Hi, Mr. Blume.
I
My name is Elliot Rhodes. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I have a two-part question.
okay.
The first part would be, what are some of your mantras that you've carried on with you through your songwriting career, both in the past and present? And my second part is, I'm a big Britney Spears fan, and Dear Diary. It's very funny, but very lovely song. I love that song.
Thanks.
I wondered if you could talk about your experience with writing that and how that went for you.
Oh my God. In terms of a songwriting mantra, and by the way, with you being from Pennsylvania, I will tell you, I went to Penn State.
Go Penn State!
From Pennsylvania also. But anyway, in terms of a mantra, I'm not sure I would call it a mantra as much as, maybe it is because it's like an overlying thing. I never for one day even entertained the possibility of not becoming successful. It was just a matter of when. It wasn't like, well, what if I don't? My father would say to me, you know, how long are you going to give this nonsense before you get a real job? And my answer was, you know, you're right. I cannot do this forever. I'm just going to give it 100 years. You know, if it hasn't happened, then I'm going to go back to school or get a job. And, but all joking aside, I don't know how to instill that in somebody. It was in me. It wasn't a decision. I don't know if I was too dumb to accept reality, or I just knew whatever I had to do, I was going to be successful, and it didn't matter how long it took. And from the time I moved to Los Angeles to be an overnight sensation, until I could earn a miserable living as a songwriter, but earn it as a songwriter, that was 11 and a half years. And it took another 5 years after that before I had songs on the charts and I was really earning money and I could go buy a house and a car and things like that. So for me, it was 16 and a half years of believing in myself. And I'll call that my mantra, for lack of a better word, that I will be successful. And the Britney thing is a very unusual story. I didn't write the song initially with Britney. I got together with Eugene Wilde, who had written a massive Backstreet Boys song, I'll Never Break Your Heart. It was huge, #1 song. He wrote it by himself, and I got together with him to write the song for Britney. The whole concept of Dear Diary, brings something up. That idea simply hit me. I wasn't looking for an idea. I wasn't thinking about what can I write for Britney. It hit me, how cool would it be if a little girl, if somebody singing is acting as if they're actually reading the entries from their diary. They're not saying, oh, today I met this boy and I really liked him and I wonder how he feels about me. No, it would literally be, Dear Diary, today, this is what happened. I met a boy, he walked me home, blah, blah, blah. Next verse, Dear Diary, this is what happened. When it hit me, I swear to you, I said to somebody, I just got my next Britney cut. They said, oh my God, congratulations. I said, well, she doesn't know it yet. Nobody knows it yet.
Because I haven't actually written the song yet.
Right, exactly. But I know I have an idea that's going to be irresistible for her little 8 and 10-year-old fans and 12-year-old fans. So I brought that to Eugene Wilde, and the two of us really very quickly, he's an amazing chord and melody guy. The two of us wrote the melody very quickly, and I had done the lyric. I didn't do it in advance, but I was sitting there, and
You
it had
brought
a
the
very,
concept into the code, right?
oh yeah. And, I had a very sad ending to the song. The end was, Dear Diary, I don't remember the exact words, but the story was, today I saw that boy and I learned how love can break your heart and bring you to your knees, because he was walking with my best friend and they were holding hands and blah, 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 blah. And, that's how we finished and demoed the song, and I submitted it to the label. And they said, okay, first of all, this is a must-cut situation on Britney. This is, melodically, conceptually, it's perfect. We have to cut this song, but you have got to have a new ending. These little girls are, 8 years old. You're going to teach them about their hearts being ripped out. And I realized, silly me, they don't get that. They don't learn the truth about men until they're like 12. So here's an important lesson. Did I rewrite that last verse? Did I give them a new last verse? No. I gave them 6 final verses. I wrote every freaking
Write that
possible.
down, everybody. 6 final
I was not about to take any chances. Today, he touched my hand and I felt my heart fly. Today, he gave me his ring. Today, he asked me to the dance. Today, and they were all different verses. And they got back to me and they said, you know what? These are all good. Every single one of them would work. But Brittany has an idea for the ending of the song. She's never written a song before in her life, but she feels like she has a better sense of what would seem real for her fans and her, in that age group. Would you be willing to sit down with Brittany if she flies to Nashville and you could work this out with her? And I said, absolutely not. I am an artist. Maybe I didn't say that. Maybe I said, oh my God, yes. So that's how Eugene flew there also, and Brittany and I worked out the lyric on the last verse, which was basically more ambiguous. The end of the song now is really, I think, Dear Diary, I think he likes me. What do you think? And that was her concept. And she didn't write the actual lines. She actually said to me, I don't know how to write the actual lines, but this is what I want it to be. And she was such a hard worker. And just to go on record, I produced her vocal on the demo. So I know she could really sing. And the stuff that made her unique was very natural for her, like breathing, those licks, and that sound that was so her. But I did have one little problem. She's got that like breathy thing, like afterwards, like at the end of a line. So I'm in the vocal booth and I'm listening, and this is what I hear. Dear diarrhea. I'm like, sweetie, it sounds amazing, but would you do it for me just one more time? Oh, sure, I'm so sorry, I'll get it perfect this time, I promise. Dear diarrhea. And well, so after like 7
It's not the
times
kind of vocal run you really want to have.
No. So after like 7 takes of this, I am imagining my career going down the toilet because it's going to sound like diarrhea. And I actually said to her, Brittany, let me tell you something. The way you're singing this, it sounds like diarrhea. And you're not going to buy me a new house. So I need you to just sing diarrhea. No, at the end of it. And she got it. We'll finish laughing. Let me tell you what the lesson is under the story. Almost every major cut I've gotten has been the result of coming up with a concept that was unique lyrically, something that was going to beat out the competition. And you've got to have a new angle, a new way to say that same old thing, or they're not going to pick yours. You can't, I like to say, we can't hit the nail so squarely on the head that we're saying exactly what, the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Right, you don't want it on the nose. The best example ever of that, I've gotten an assignment to write an end credit song for a movie, and they literally said to me, the movie is to empower very young girls, and the whole thing is, as long as I believe in myself, I can do anything. And I hung up the phone and I wrote, as long as I believe I can do anything, as long as I believe. Great, done, finished. I go back to it after dinner to listen to it fresh. And I realized, Jason, you teach people not to hit stuff so squarely on the nose, and it's what you just did. And I knew perfectly well if I got that assignment, 50 other writers or more got that same assignment. And I've got to beat them out. And I looked back and I realized I had one killer line in that whole song. At the end of the second verse, it said, if I wasn't meant to fly, I wouldn't have these wings. Now that is so much more interesting than as long as I believe in myself, I can do anything. I threw out the whole song and wrote, If I wasn't meant to fly, I wouldn't have these wings. I wouldn't reach up to the sky every night in my dreams. There's a voice inside of me saying I can do anything. 'Cause if I wasn't meant to fly, I wouldn't have these wings. And that by myself, the end credit for the animated Barbie movie.
Yeah, I love those movies. I watched all of those. I knew that song.
Laugh, laugh, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Right?
Exactly, and I'm still seeing the money when that airs all over the world on television.
That's a great film.
Yeah.
The point being, find the angle. How else can you be the obvious?
But you know, isn't that another example of that work ethic you described earlier of not settling for the first version of a melody?
Yeah.
This is, I've got the concept, the emotion of the concept is right, but maybe my first way of finding it is too on the nose, it's too literal.
Exactly.
And to not settle for that too quickly, that's kind of that skill. Question for you about the Britney song. And boy, you got a great story out of him with your questions.
So,
Let's give that a shout out for that. You spend a lot of time just on the hunt for great lines, great concepts before you know the artist that you might be pitching it for? Or do you think you wouldn't have gotten that concept if you weren't on the hunt for something for Britney because you knew you needed a chance to pitch something for Britney?
it was unconscious. I was definitely not thinking Britney when that idea hit my head. But did my brain know that I've already had a Britney Spears cut? There's another album coming up. I'm going to write with Eugene Wilde or somebody else. Yes, of course I knew that. I think for me it was more unconscious, but I'm always on that hunt. I keep an entire file of phrases, titles, lyrical images, as well as melodic ideas. There's snippets that might be just like little melodies, little chord riffs, grooves, anything. And I put these in my little computer file marked future hits because I like to be an optimist. And I wouldn't dream of walking into a co-writing session without a half a dozen or more strong ideas that I feel confident about. And I will work on those. I call them song starts, so that I don't just have to hope I come up with something that day. But the secret is 9 times out of 10, when the adrenaline starts pumping and I'm on my way to the writing session, that's when the better idea comes out. But I still want the assurance. I want to know I've got a half a dozen things, in my back pocket if I need them.
Yeah, that's great advice. And do you kind of cull through your file knowing the co-writer you're going to write with and kind of look for some things to bring to the table in your back pocket? Kind of prep a list of song starts to bring to the session for that writer?
I bring them all to the session, but yes, certain ones are going to be more appropriate for some writers than others. A lot of times I'm writing to a track. A lot of times my best co-writer is somebody who's going to produce a track and I'm going to do the top line or more of the top line than they will. Top line, I assume you all know, melody and lyrics that go on top of a musical backing track. I'm not a track guy. I wish I were, but I'm not. And so what I'll do is a lot of times ask them to play me some tracks that they've got going on, and I'll just be going through my ideas while I'm listening to the track and hearing, does one of them go with this track?
One of them will land, yeah.
Right, and other times I may just say, I have got such a great idea. What do you think of this? And if they love the idea, they're going to say, let me start building a track. I mean, it can go either way, but for me, the bottom line is I would not dream of walking into a session without a lot of stuff in my back pocket.
awesome advice. And I'll talk to you offline because I've thought a lot about these things, but I want to get some more questions from, so
Thank you.
you can come up and get ready for the next one too.
Oh, hey, where's the camera? Oh,
Yeah.
hey, hi, Jason. I'm Linda.
Hi.
Oh my
What's
gosh,
your name? Tell me your name.
Linda.
Yeah.
I have a question to ask you. So, as a songwriter, do you think it's important that you need to be able to work in different genre? Because for now, like I'm a C-pop songwriter. Like I'm really easy to come up with a catchy phrase with C-pop, but it's more limited when I come to other style like rock, like bossa nova, you know. So I was like, as a songwriter, you need to always expose to different style and how you avoid to be, like, for example, how you avoid to be trapped in the Jason style, so called.
It's really a great question. The first answer in terms of do you really need to be able to write in multiple styles? I would say no. If you're fantastic at one thing, that's what you do. There are plenty of people who write one style. I worked in Korea writing K-pop and EDM, and the people that I worked with there were two different teams. Some were doing K-pop, some were doing EDM. The EDM guys, I shouldn't say guys because there were some women also, that's all they do. They live and breathe that. They wouldn't dream of writing, a C-pop song or a country song or anything else. Tons of the successful writers in Nashville do nothing but write country songs. I don't think there's any need to be versatile. There's just a need to be amazing at what you do. And, unless it bothers you being limited, for me, it's really strange. The only reason I can explain why I write so many different genres, because I mean, it sounds arrogant, but I've had success really in a lot of genres: country, pop, R&B, rock, Christian music, and I'm not Christian. But a lot of it is like I grew up on a tremendous variety of music. My sister had a major record deal when I was 9 years old, so I was hearing all the music that she was doing with her girl group, and my father was listening to Frank Sinatra and big bands, and then I got into just every kind of music. I mean, and literally, I grew up in Philadelphia where we had this huge concert venue called the Spectrum back then. It's not there anymore. But every superstar act, regardless of the genre, played this, and I saw every single show that came there. It didn't matter whether it was Black Sabbath or whether it was Carole King and James Taylor. If it was a star, I was there. And I got exposed to so much music, and for me, it's just natural. I'm a chameleon. I write different styles, and I would get bored stiff if I didn't. But that's just me, and I think that's unusual. I think most people, you need to do one thing. I think the second part of your question was how do you avoid, when you're doing one thing, how do you avoid being redundant? How do you avoid writing the same song over and over again? I'm not sure I have a good answer for that. I don't think it's a problem for me. I would say try different tempos. The other thing that I think can really stir things up a lot is try a different approach to writing. If you always write on a keyboard, get away from the keyboard. Try it a cappella, try it with a guitar if you play another instrument. Try coming up, if you always write melody first, try a lyric first, anything to start up and approach things differently. I'm not sure I have any other great advice about how to not keep reiterating the same song. It's just, I don't think it's something I've personally had an issue with.
But I think what you just came up with is a great thing to think about, which is that even if you're trying to write in one focused style, by changing your process, by changing your way of getting into it, you're gonna find a way into different kinds of material, even maybe in that narrow lane. That's great. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'll tell you a great example of that. I work at a lot of different music festivals that are so awesome, and one of them is the Hawaii Songwriting Festival. It's on the big island of Hawaii. It's actually what brought me to Hawaii 15 years ago for the first time. And by that afternoon, I had said, someday I will live in Hawaii. Anyway, if you're interested in that Hawaii Songwriting Festival, it's a phenomenal opportunity to pitch film and television music primarily. They always have some big special guests. So Colby Calais was the special guest a couple of years ago, and it's very intimate. She was talking about how she wrote her biggest hit that put her on the map, Bubbly. And she said that somebody had left a guitar at her home, and they had left it in an alternate tuning. And she didn't have a tuner at home. So she didn't know how to retune the guitar to get it back to where it needed to be. So she started strumming in the alternative tuning, and out came Bubbly that she said would never, never have been written if she just had her regular tuning. So I think it's just a great example of just stirring things up. If you're not a guitarist, you know, like I said, get away from the instruments, see what comes out of you a cappella. You know, or if you do play multiple instruments, try the other one.
Great. Let's get the next question up.
So the woo.
Hi, my name is Emily Spector. I'm a songwriter. First things first, I'm a giant Jess McCartney fan. You
Oh!
worked on Why Don't You Kiss Her? Blows my mind. I'm just crying in the back row.
Oh!
I listened to
Thank
that
you.
like every night of sixth grade, dreaming
Oh
about
my
my eighth grade class. So thank you for that. My
Thank you.
my question is, it sounds like broad, but I'll explain it. What does songwriting mean to you when it's your job, kind of? Like,
Ooh.
has it changed for you? I'm coming off, I just was in Nashville for a week, and you know, it's all commercial, this, commercial, that, how you gonna write this, how you gonna pitch it. To this person, can you write from this other person's perspective? And when you're writing something like your diary, do you feel like you're writing, you know, your story, still your heart through a different lens? Or are you like really projecting, you know, you're putting your brain in a whole new place? Does it still feel personal? Yeah.
Authentic, yeah.
Yeah, like, is it, are you
Wow,
passionate
what
about
a
it?
question.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
You have to
One thing
remember,
I want
Jason,
to
that, you know, you wrote hits for 8-year-olds 10 years ago. Guess what? We're all sitting here in this room.
You know, one thing I want to clarify is, yes, your description of Nashville in terms of it being very commercially oriented, you know, gotta have a hit for so-and-so, that exists, absolutely. But, you know, Nashville is also the home, really, of Americana music. There's a lot of music in Nashville that I think is the most amazing work being produced by songwriters that are not the hit songs. The people who I worship at their feet are not necessarily the hit songwriters in Nashville. I'm not saying they're not successful, but they're successful in a different way, earning a living doing house concerts or smaller venues and selling product from the stage. And I don't know if you're aware of an artist named Mary Gauthier, who was Grammy nominated this year for Best Folk Album. I worship Mary. I don't know what else to say.
Bonnie's trying to bring Mary here to help with our Songs for Social Change initiative. We're
Oh.
gonna bring her here.
She's you know,
She was originally
I can think of a
from
better
Boston.
person for what you're describing, by the way. And I can't use the exact story that with the language that came out of Mary's mouth, but she and I had taught a camp together, side by side, literally, and we were open to questions. And somebody asked us, what would you do if somebody asked you to rewrite your song? Somebody famous asked you to rewrite your song. And Mary, without a moment's hesitation, said, you know, if dead Elvis rose up from the grave and asked me to change a line for his comeback single, I would tell him to go, and you can imagine what the rest of it was. It started with an S and it ended with yourself. I then responded, well, if dead Elvis's fourth cousin twice removed, who lived down the block, told me I have an independent label deal, would you rewrite 2/3 of your song for me? My answer would be, when do you need it? Because my songs are in two categories. I'm a business person. I am writing and I'm the business. I want to earn money. I am not married to a Britney Spears song or a Jesse McCartney song. I take pride in having learned the craft well enough to imagine what would connect to the hearts of their listeners. That's what I'm thinking about. And sometimes I'll ask my sister's little girl what's going on with her in school or whatever to try and get some inspiration. But those songs are not art for me. They're craft, and I'm thrilled that I have the ability to do them. They've bought me a couple of houses and some really fancy cars that I enjoy, and I won't apologize for that. But you know what? I have songs that I have written primarily with a woman named Karen Taylor Good that are so deep. Karen was nominated for a Song of the Year Grammy, and she has left the commercial business to do solely her own music with her as an artist that is very spiritual, very deep, very positive, not religious, but positive. It's like this whole world of positive music.
Karen has written a lot with Lisa Ashman, hasn't she?
Yes, I've written with Lisa also way back. And those songs are so special. Those songs mean more to me than any of the other songs that paid my bills. And some of those songs, when I wrote them with Karen, we would be crying in the session. And we would say to each other, oh my God, nobody will ever record this song. And I love it from the bottom of my soul. So I don't care. I'm just so grateful that this song came through me. And guess what? Those songs have gotten recorded. I think it might be tougher today than it was when we wrote those songs 10, 15 years ago. But my point is, I wouldn't trade that for the world.
That is a great answer, Jason. Oops, I hope I haven't lost you. You still there?
I'm there,
Yeah, you're breaking up.
and you're there.
Yeah, I just want to say that was a really beautiful thing to hear. And there's such humility and such love of the deep art of songwriting in what you just said. And I think it gives an answer that even if you are primarily trying to work as a craftsperson and doing it professionally, you can still nurture yourself by making sure you have time and respect for doing that work as well. And maybe you don't expect the same things out of it because it nurtures something different for you, but you need both of those things in your work. Yeah.
Or the other way around. I mean, I guess what I'm really saying is I don't think it has to be mutually exclusive. I think you can write songs that are for you, from your soul, for your soul, and you can write craft. And they don't have to be the same songs. But you know what? When you apply the craft to those songs that come from your soul, you wind up with The Joke with 6 Grammy nominations. Because, don't even get me started on that song again. I'm just still crazy for it.
Yeah. Well, you make a really good point, which is for a room full of people that are feeling like writing my own songs and being an artist or writing for other people, that's not the same choice as writing something that feels like craft and writing something that feels like authenticity. I think you can write authentically a song that you are intending someone else to perform. There's I'm going to tell you something that I probably shouldn't say, but I think I'm safe that this isn't going to wind up in Germany or in Norway. But I just mentored last week at a camp
in Norway where the point was, a publisher came from Germany and said, we need songs for these two artists. And the kinds of songs they needed, one of the genres, I didn't even know what it was. And I'm supposed to mentor people and tell them how to write these songs. They wanted Schlager songs, Schlager. They don't really pronounce the R, Schlager songs. And I said to him,
we have a minor in that here at Berkeley.
I'll bet you do. Very minor.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I said to him, how do you define this? What makes a song a Schlager song as opposed to a pop song or whatever? And he said, you know, what makes it this Schlager is the cheesy, easy to remember, sing-along chorus melodies that everybody can sing, whether it's 7 years old or 70 years old. The song comes on and everybody wants to sing the chorus. I thought, that sounds like any hit. Not any hit, but a lot of them. And I studied a lot of these songs. Here's my point, why I brought this up from what you said. A lot of the people who were in this song camp as students were artists writing solely for themselves. They had no interest whatsoever in ever writing for anybody else, let alone some stupid, cheesy Schlager song. And literally the publisher used that word. He said, cheesy is what defines this melody. And a lot of them were like, well, I'm just too good to do this because I'm on The Voice and I'm an artist and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't take part in it. And 21 songs were written. Nobody in this camp had ever written a Schlager song. I don't think anybody knew what it was. There were some freaking amazing songs to come out of this camp. Chill Bump, oh my God, amazing songs. And I don't know yet how many of them will get cut. But if they do, we're talking big money. Germany is the 3rd or 4th biggest market in the world for music sales, and they still have physical sales. They said, you know, a hit single is still going to sell 150,000 CDs. This can be a lot of money. So anyway, the point being, whether these people will get that cut or not, the ones that put their ego outside the door now have another tool in their toolbox that might wind up getting them the biggest hit of their career for themselves, because I believe it all comes down to the melody. And when you're really focusing on, I don't care what the words are right now, I don't care anything but I want a melody that I'm going to hear one time and I can't stop singing along. This can't be a bad tool to acquire. So what I'm saying is, even that writing for other artists, if you think that's not what you want to do, can really help you writing for yourself.
Great point. Even if your goal is to be your own artist, you gain skills from actually having to think of those melodies in someone else's voice. Pivoting on that, I mean, you've been in the industry a long time and you've seen a lot of eras of music. Do you feel like there are kind of universal rules or laws of what makes a great melody, or have you heard the fashions shift from era to era, from style to style? Do you kind of soak up a lot of music in a particular style to get that kind of melodic flavor in your mind, or do you feel like you bring the same principles to great melody writing over and over again?
Gosh, that is a tough question to answer. You know, on the airplane,
I had to ask you at least one hard one, you know.
Well, that was a really hard one.
Okay.
On the airplane, I watched the Whitney Houston documentary, Whitney. God, so heartbreaking. But it reminded me of the melodies that were just unbelievable. The melodies in her songs were so gorgeous. And I don't hear, I mean, that is no longer in vogue. I don't hear these big soaring choruses with these huge demanding notes unless maybe they're coming from Adele. Not that we're hearing much from Adele these days, but what I'm saying is things have changed. The Celine Dion kind of songs, those are gone.
Those are songs that Diane Warren was making her millions with, yeah.
Yes, yes. And, you know, Diane Warren and anybody else who's going to continue being successful shifts. Diane wound up with cuts with Justin Bieber, with Lady Gaga. I think it's the same with Max Martin, that if you're going to be successful long term, you have to have the ability to shift, to go with the wind. Right now, I don't hear a lot of the kinds of melodies that I miss, that I would love to hear. And yet, sure, nobody's stopping me from writing them, but it's going to be really tough for me to get them cut. I hear more rhythms. I hear hip-hop rhythms infused in melodies more so than the big notes and the big intervals between them. And instead I'm hearing catchy, hooky rhythms that differentiate a chorus more so than that chorus soaring up to the stratosphere and having the big long-held notes. But again, I don't think there's any hardcore rule, but I do think things change. And I think they will continue to change. Hip-hop has ruled the charts and the market for longer than any other significant type of music that I can think of, whether it was big band music or Motown or the British invasion or punk or grunge or whatever it was. Nothing has lasted as long as hip-hop. And I don't think it's ever going to completely go away, but there will be a new thing. Guess what? Somebody's got to create that new thing. Why not you? It's
You guys have a week.
scary. Yeah, I'm setting my timer.
Yeah. The good news is that I've heard some soaring melodies even from people in this room. So melody ain't dead yet.
And listen to the joke if you want to hear a melody that slays you.
Yeah. Cool. We're
But there's
almost
no
done.
rules. I was just going to say, there's no black and white, this is how you must do it. If there was, we'd just have computers churning out the songs. And we're not ready for that till next year.
Susan, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We got about 10 minutes. I want to make sure I make time if there might be one or two more questions. Let's get a few of those in. Has this been an interesting conversation for all of you?
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Bruno, and what I wanted to ask is that, like, it's kind of commonplace in songwriting that the concept of the song you're writing needs to agree with the image of the artist you're writing for.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like melodies work the same way, though?
Yes,
In what
there's
sense,
no doubt.
In what sense? Like, could you go a little deeper into that? Like, how would you approach that?
I think
So
what
are
I
you
do,
thinking of the persona of the artist as you work on a melody for that artist, not just the lyrics?
What
That
makes
is a
melody
great question. We haven't
It is.
asked that question.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and often I don't. I might think I do. For the person who was so kind about the Jesse McCartney song, I wrote that song for the Backstreet Boys, hoping they would record it. So if I were thinking strictly, what can I do for the Backstreet Boys? Well, I wrote it, but then somebody else recorded it. And that's happened to me many times. Other times, I'm just writing a song, not so much anymore, but I used to just go to an office. For 12 years, I went to an office and I wrote songs Monday through Friday. That's my job. And I didn't know necessarily who I was writing for. But let's, to answer your question better, say that I do know who I'm writing for. Right now, I know who I'm writing for. I'm working with one specific band, and harmonies are really important for them. They have unbelievably beautiful, perfect harmonies. So I want to write melodies that are going to allow them to shine with 3-part harmonies, and that's probably going to include some long held out notes. If it's going to be very rhythmic, very choppy, it's going to be very hard to put tight harmonies on it. So that's one aspect. But also, if I'm right, I want to know the artist's strong points vocally. Do they have a huge range? If they do, I want to write to show that range or nobody's going to know. But what if they have a very narrow range? For example, Taylor Swift.
I was just
I'm
gonna
not,
say, yeah, Taylor Swift.
yeah, I'm not knocking her in any way. I think she's absolutely brilliant, absolutely amazing songwriter. If you want to know what an amazing songwriter Taylor Swift is, Google the song or the lyrics, Red. She wrote it by herself. It's one of the most incredible lyrics. I use it in a class and it just never stops blowing me away. But Taylor Swift does not have the vocals of Ariana Grande. And, you know, that's the way it is. She has a sound, but she has a much smaller range, which actually has somehow miraculously gotten better since she started working with Max Martin. I don't know if it's because he's like the best vocal producer in the world or if it's vocal lessons, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's still not Ariana Grande. So if I'm writing for an artist like that, I need to find ways to be catchy melodically the way she does, which is by using rhythms as opposed to notes. She wears short shorts, I did it. It's not all over the place in terms of range, but it's so hooky, so catchy. And she is the master of that. And where she does that better than I think anybody is in her pre-choruses. It's crazy. You listen to her pre-choruses and you will hear some of the hookiest, catchiest melodies anywhere. So that's what I do melodically. I want to study what the artist, you know, what their strengths are. Do they have those smoky low tones that I want to highlight in a melody? So that's pretty much my answer.
Thank you.
Great answer. I think we have time for one more question. One? If you don't step up, I'll come up with one. We actually went deep onto the craft side, and I think it was a wonderful direction. How do you feel about where we spent this? But I do want to circle around a little bit for maybe a final question that's a little bit more about the marketplace. And that is, you mentioned the staff deal that you got.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that the marketplace has changed radically, say in Nashville, and that it's much harder now to get a traditional staff writer deal where you are actually, you know, going into an office 9 to 5, writing with other writers to pitch to an artist. Would you say right now it's more about writing with the artist as opposed to co-writers writing for artists and pitching it over? What advice would you have for a way to enter into the market now that the staff writing deals are getting harder to find in the traditional sense?
They are harder, yes. Are they impossible? No. I know tons of people who still have staff writing deals. You just have to write exceptional songs that are better than what the other staff writers are doing. Not just better, but some different angle, some little something to set your songs apart and make them say, I have to sign this writer. I do think it remains very, very important to align with a publisher. They can do things for you you cannot do on your own, meaning hooking you up with the right collaborations, including with the artists. Do I think it's important to write with the artists? Of course it is. There's a publisher who I heard speak at a song camp that I was teaching at, and he had published a Song of the Year, he had published a song. It was Country Song of the Year. Song absolutely slayed me. And he said to those people, you know what? Yes, it's important to write with artists, but it's more important to be able to write the kind of song that can be Song of the Year, whether you write it with the artist or not, because it's not going to do you or the artist any good to write a good song. They don't need a good song. They need the oh my God, career and life-changing song. You know, they need Shape of You, they need Havana, they need Despacito, these huge songs, not an album cut. So writing with the artist is absolutely, you've got your foot in the door. You will have a better opportunity of having your song considered. But guess what? Those artists are writing with so many people. The band I'm writing with right now is writing with the #1 and #2 writer of the year in Nashville. One of the writers they're working with has, ready for this, 32 #1 singles. This is my competition. Yes, I'm writing with the artist, but if I don't write something better than what they write with Writer of the Year, I'm not going to make that album, and I'm not going to deserve to. And they need those songs. I want them to have those songs, whether they come out of me or not. So yes, you want to be able to write with artists, with producers, with well-connected other writers, and publishers are what can do that for you, but you are going to have, in a sense, the way a model would have a portfolio to show what they're capable of. You are going to have your demos that are at that level to interest the publisher, with the understanding that it has gotten tougher. You are going to have to work harder. And how great is that? Because you want hit singles. Who wants album cuts? You want the smash hit singles. Go for it. Woo! All right.
That would be a great way to end on a high note.
What are the names of those other writers?
I think we'll let him keep that private. Jason, I want to thank
I
you.
didn't hear what the question was,
I
but
wanted
yes.
to know the names of the other writers, and I said maybe that if you'd wanted to share them, you probably would have. So, yeah. I think we'll leave it here, and thank you. We're going to give you one more round of thunderous birthday. I'm glad I got a chance to finally virtually meet you. I didn't have a chance to give you a Nashville handshake or hand you a cassette because you're in Hawaii. But I think we all learned a lot, and thank you so much for contributing your time and your experience to all of us. Take care.
The pleasure was mine. I had a blast.
Thank
Best of luck, everybody.
Thank you.
That was so nice. He's so lovely.
He's a doctor.
You know,
Yeah.
he's a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye.
Oh, wait.